I want to thank our sponsor, Planet Ford. Planet Ford has always been a proud supporter of law enforcement in the community, providing customer service and fleet management, sales, and service. If you're looking for that personal quality service, contact Planet Ford in Spring or online at planetford.com. You're listening to Crime Scene Today. I'm your host, Dan Zentek, where we talk about current and future issues affecting law enforcement, forensics, and crime scene investigation. Today, joining me, I have Chief Phillips from Montgomery ISD Police. Thank you for coming in today, Chief, and congratulations on your promotion, your recent position. So we have a bunch of things to talk about today, and obviously we're going to focus on school district police, something that you've spent the majority of your career. If you can sort of run me through, I know that that's majority of what you've done for policing, so if you can sort of tell me where you've been and what you've sort of done in those spots there.
Okay, well, thanks for having me today. I was looking forward to being here a little bit earlier than now, but, things got a little busy, so I couldn't break away as soon as I wanted to. But as far as my law enforcement career, I have 26 years of law enforcement. Started off with the Port Authority Police Department, stayed there for about 5 years, got some good training in accident investigations and other particular specialized crimes when I was there. They were in the process of reorganization. So they had a big layoff while I was there, and fortunately I made the cut for that first layoff, but I thought, it was a little shaky. So I decided to look for employment at Spring ISD, where I was hired. I worked there for 10 years, started off on the campus as a campus officer, so I got that experience, got a wealth of experience at Spring ISD. Their motto there was, you catch them, you clean them. Right. And so we did a lot of good work there on the campus. And after that, I was promoted to sergeant, where I was over the patrol division and training. So I stayed there as a sergeant for 7 years and decided that I wanted to kind of move up a little bit, and took a captain's position at Lone Star College. Great experience. I had the opportunity to work at 4 of the 6 campuses, Kingwood, Montgomery, North Harris, and University Park. So I got some great experience as far as administration was there at the college level.
Now, just to explain a little bit from this, because I know we have a lot of local listeners. We have a lot that are outside state and even outside the country that so certainly there's a big difference between one school district. Now, Spring ISD is located in Harris County, where third largest county in the nation. And, and Spring is a very large school district. How many students are there?
I think right now, I don't know right now, but back then it was about 35,000.
Right, and I know the schools have expanded. I can't remember how many high schools they have now. What do they have back then?
Back then there were 3. I think they have 4 now.
So I mean, it was a large department.
Right.
Mean, they had their own dispatch. They still have their own dispatch center, patrol. They had investigated everything. Right.
Exactly.
So it's because I'm trying to cover from some people. They may only have 2 schools in their area, or whatever. I mean, this is a large school district. And the same as you leaving there, going to Lone Star, which used to be called North Harris. It's actually the largest college system in the state.
Right. About 90 to 100,000 students. Right. Over 5,000 employees. So it's very large community college.
Yeah. So obviously a big difference, I would expect. I don't know. I've never worked school policing, but I'm guessing a big difference between secondary education, Spring ISD, and college campuses.
Right. Well, I wouldn't say too much of a difference because in both of them you want to be hands-on with the students, with the staff, administration. The only difference is, and that's changing because of the high school students that are participating in college courses now. So a lot of that is changing.
Dual credit.
Yeah, the dual credit. So a lot of that is changing for the law enforcement on the college level. So they're really getting educated in school-based law enforcement as well. So
I guess one of the biggest changes or challenges, obviously in secondary school, you're dealing with a lot of juvenile law.
Right.
I would gather no juvenile law at the college level.
Very little.
Very little.
Very
right?
little. Yeah.
So that one role, but from that, so you were at Lone Star how long?
I was at Lone Star for 10 years.
10 years.
10 years. And so I had an opportunity to serve in a couple of areas. When I got there, I was commander over 3 colleges. And in my last year and a half, I was the commander over support operations, which detailed investigations, training, dispatch, and the honor guard, which that was kind of a new area for me at the time.
Okay. So well, tell us about how you just made chief. You got the top dog at the school district. So how did that happen?
Very interesting experience. And when I say interesting, just going back to just some history for me, this was the 4th chief position that I was in line for.
Okay.
3 others were at, one was at University of Houston downtown. The other one was Prairie View A&M. And the other was Tulsa Community College in Oklahoma.
Wow. Okay.
And so, yeah, very different experience going up there to Tulsa. And so I was always the bridesmaid and not the bride. And so my perspective from that was that I wasn't rejected, I was redirected.
Right.
And so in all of that, I wanted to be somewhere that they wanted me, a courtship.
Right.
And so when I applied at Montgomery ISD, they really courted me well. They wanted to know all about me. They wanted to know all about my family. And they did the necessary things to find that information out. And so it was like, do you like me? I like you.
Right.
So it was a perfect fit for me. And everything just kind of fell into place. The superintendent, Dr. Morrison, is great. It's great. The staff, administration there, they're
Now,
great.
the superintendent just started too.
Yes.
New superintendent.
Yes,
there.
new superintendent there, and I think he started back in June.
Okay, and then you took the position. What month was that?
November 12th.
Okay, so
Yeah.
actually we at a month yet?
We're at a month.
We're-
We're at a month. Yeah.
We're at a month. So
Yeah.
obviously, every chief when they first take over, things usually running pretty
Right.
smooth. There's not issues of that nature, but obviously there's things to evaluate, things to do. So what really has sort of been your role? I mean, sort of speaking to the other chiefs have to take over. What are some top priorities that you have to come in to evaluate when you're sort of taking that role?
Well, I think the most important thing you already said is evaluation, and just looking from a outside perspective of what needs to change, what doesn't need to change, contacts you need to make, relationships you need to build. And I think I put together a 30, 60, 90-day plan, but you really can't do that plan until you have a great perspective of where you are.
Sure.
And so when I arrived at Montgomery ISD, I had the opportunity within the last 3 weeks to meet with all administration. I've had the opportunity to build some relationships with the local law enforcement, the constable's office, the sheriff department. I've met with all the heads of those departments, the city. So it's I think the most important thing in that 30 days is building those relationships.
Sure. Right.
And so after that is then looking at where you are in the police department, your officers. I had a chance to meet with all my officers and gauge where they are, what they want to do, their training, their certifications, their expectations. So because I believe that service should be number one, and the community is part of that service, and we just want to serve.
So a little bit about your school district that you now serve.
Mm-hmm.
So how many students are there?
We have approximately 9,000.
Okay, and it's y'all have 2 high schools yet? It's
2 high schools, 2 middle schools, and 4 elementary schools.
Okay, so how many officers you have to take care of all that?
Right now we have 8,
Okay.
9 including myself, and we're hiring for 1 more, and hopefully in the future we'll be hiring for a couple more positions.
Well, see, and I think and that's sort of clarification of
what the school district police do, because a lot of people have the perception, and I would say a wrong perception, that y'all go in and y'all work school hours. You get there 8 to 2, and that's it, and y'all are done, not taking into account
Right.
y'all have football games,
Right.
basketball games, extracurricular stuff.
Right,
People
right.
have, it's the schools in many places are open for public meetings and
Exactly.
different things. And so, I mean, y'all's job by its nature is security for the persons and property entering those buildings at any
Right.
time, right?
Right, right. You're right. That is a kind of perception that people have of the school district, that we're only there when the kids are there, and that's it. But you're totally right. We have vast functions that we have to cover with our police department, and sometimes it stretches us because we're only 8 officers, and we have 2 high schools, we have 2 middle schools, we have football games on Friday, sometimes Thursday. We have a football game, playoff game this week. So it sometimes lends us to hire outside agencies to assist us with those big events that we have. But yeah, you're right. It is that perception that we're only there 8 hours.
So, which sort of gets to the roles, right? I mean, everyone considers, and I think, there's some news articles that come out that have sort of talked about policing in schools. And I think the increase of policing really happened, and you were doing it long before, but what really increased when we started having school shootings, right? We started having, Columbine was, of course, the one everyone thinks of. But when that happened, people are thinking we need police in the school, right?
Right.
But I think the connection that people have made with that is that because we put police in the schools because of shootings, well, there's really not shootings happening all the time, so what are the police doing, right?
Right.
Why do we need them if it's really not, if it's only this rare thing that's happening, and certainly we want them there if that's happening, or,
Right.
So, but that's really not it.
Right.
I mean, that's one point. I mean, I sort of broke down at least my opinion, and one is deterring, right? I mean, I know Magnolia ISD, which is sort of border to y'all, they've put an officer in every school for that purpose. It's a deterrent, right?
Right. Right.
Basic crimes, if we have a police out there, someone sees it, maybe they won't go, right?
Right.
There's others, they don't care whether you're there or not. They're going to
Exactly.
commit the crime, right? And also to the students. Obviously, some students are going to misbehave, but if there's a presence there, whether it's an authority figure of police or teacher seeing them, whatever, I
Right.
mean, that sort of deters that. But it's one function, but there's so many other functions that y'all do.
Right. Right.
So if you could sort of walk through, I guess, like if I'm getting hired by you, what should I expect? I'm a brand new school police officer. What do you expect from me? What do I expect to be happening on my job?
Well, we kind of follow what's called the Triad Model. That's enforcing the law, counseling students, teaching faculty, staff, and students about safety issues. Those 3 things are very important. There's some other detailed things that we do, but those are the 3 very important things, I think, that allows us to do our job and allows us to have a relationship with the students and faculty, staff that are there. So in those 3 aspects, it covers a lot of things, a lot of subtopics that we actually go through. So enforcing the law, our officers have to be well-versed in education law.
Sure.
And so, which can sometimes be a challenge. And so working with the county attorneys go a long way, and gives us a better perspective of the law and how it's managed, how we enforce it, and how we go about teaching those students, those educators about the law. And so I think that's one of the very important parts, that we have to know the law. We have to know the penal code as it relates to education code. Second thing is counseling our students. And I'm not talking about the type of counseling you get from a counselor inside the school. I'm talking about being there to assist, being there to communicate with them. Because as you know, law enforcement officers wear many hats.
Right.
We're police officers. We're sometimes paramedics. We're counselors. We're teachers. So that aspect in the ISD goes a long way. Teaching those kids about, sometimes even about life, and sharing experiences with them to deter them from going the wrong way. And just kind of, because you and I were kids once before. We messed up, but there wasn't a police officer in the school then.
Right.
We got the.
There was a gym teacher.
There was a gym teacher with the paddle.
Yeah. You can do it again. That's right.
Yeah, and so we learned through the Board of Education,
Right.
but their learning curve is different now, and so we have to be a part of that with the system administration. And that third part of the triad is education, especially for the staff, administration, and the students. Why are we there? Let them know why we're there. We're there to make sure that the school is safe, a safe environment where students can learn, where teachers can teach, where administrators can do their job in a safe environment. And I think that's part of the Triad model that we follow.
Well, and I think it goes back to just the very foundation of police, right? And
Right.
that is the reason we have police is so that our citizens and community have security.
Right.
And can feel safe in their homes and in walking around, do everything. And really, the school is, in and of itself, a community.
Right,
You know,
right,
so it is to allow that safe ability to obtain an education, for a teacher to be able to give that education.
Exactly.
For parents to be able to feel secure in leaving their children at a place for 8 hours a day,
Right.
that they're going to be safe and secure. So it's
Right.
really the foundation of every police to
Exactly.
take care of a community, right?
exactly.
You talked on with the relationship
Mm-hmm.
with students, and especially in this time, we've had a couple of shows in which we've discussed the strain that currently
Mm-hmm.
between law enforcement and the community. And again, we've talked, we don't see it as much here. Our community is very supportive of law enforcement here,
Mm-hmm. Right.
but it is happening in other areas. But the one thing that we do see is in our recruiting, in people joining the academy, in people joining the police force, we've seen a decline.
Right, exactly.
And we have seen a mass media presence of the things police do improperly
Right,
versus the benefit of it, and we've seen some of the effects from that. One of the biggest roles I see as a police officer in the school is that mentor and that relationship that a child actually sees a police officer, one, as a person,
right,
that they get to know you in some way. Second is that they feel comfortable, as you said, coming just
Right.
talking about life,
exactly.
right?
Exactly.
Knowing that they can come have a conversation with you that, mom and dad are doing this, my brother does this. Knowing is like you're not heading out the door, running over there to go and do
Right,
something. It's
right.
to have that conversation. What
That
do
conversation,
I do?
yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
My dad wants me to sell drugs. What do I do? Okay.
Mm-hmm.
And those conversations happen.
Right, right.
They're trying to struggle through life, and you are a mentor in that relationship. So that sort of brings me to one article that had come out. And there's a couple of different places, but and they're all very similar to many of the conversations we've had. It all seems to be, Chicago, Minneapolis,
Right,
Portland,
right.
Denver, Seattle, right?
Right.
Places we're seeing protests, which to me sort of tells me there's already a breakdown
Right.
between community and law enforcement in those areas. But and they even talk about in the articles that these things have come up after dealing with like George Floyd and other protests, that I personally can't make the connection between the death of George Floyd and removing officers from a school.
Yeah, that is interesting that you can go from one extreme to the next.
It seems to be that we've, at law enforcement looking at, we all say, no, we don't want any bad cops. We don't want any bad
Right.
use of force.
Right.
We're all on board for that.
Right,
But somehow I don't know another word than punishment is to, well, let's defund police. Let's
Right.
take away police. Well, if they're there for the good purpose, then I'm not positive that that's the best solution. And we've seen the impact that that's caused already in
Right,
certain areas.
right.
But so here they've talked about in Minneapolis, Portland, Denver, Seattle is totally removing them.
Right.
They're out of the schools. There are no cops in schools anymore. And then Chicago, which actually one of the statements they made, I have no issue with the statement they made. They said that in their school that they wanted to review any police officers on campus that had disciplinary issues and address those issues. Well,
Right.
that's what you should be doing anyway.
Exactly.
Right.
Exactly.
So that's, and possibly to remove those officers causing those issues.
Exactly. Exactly.
That's what you normally do.
Right,
Right.
right.
So I'm not saying that they're possibly doing anything that would hurt them, possibly help them, but I don't see a benefit whatsoever of removing police from the school. I'm not sure what the solution would be if they're not there.
Right,
Because
right.
as we've just talked, there's a purpose in them being there.
Exactly, and I'm glad I live in the great state of Texas, and because it is a different mindset within our local community, and the support for the police departments in this area is tremendous, and I think that all of those issues that you just mentioned from other states are issues that have not been addressed in the past. And because they haven't been addressed in the past, as far as getting officers off the street that don't need to be on the street, we live in a time and age where it's not only police officers, and I state this when I talk to people, there are bad apples in every job you can go to. You can find.
We made a living off of it.
Yeah, exactly, exactly. So the only difference is that when it happens to a police officer, it's highlighted, and I don't think that it shouldn't be highlighted because we're public servants. But I think that we should not be so quick to judge on particular incidents and situations. And I'm not saying that those incidents and situations were wrong. I just think that we need to be looked at as people.
Well, it's the same as like we said. What's happening on a street corner in Minneapolis, I don't see the correlation on how that should affect a school
Yeah,
in Colorado.
right.
Okay.
It's flipping the script, and safety is paramount, and we want to make sure these kids are safe. And I think that taking the law enforcement out of the school just makes us unsafe, and it actually sets us up for the things that we don't want to see in the future.
Well, and what we're seeing already, not specifically in the school, but I see it heading there. So
Right.
one thing that we talked about last week, a couple of agencies have already defunded. Okay, Austin, LAPD, New Orleans, millions and millions of dollars they've taken away. And obviously, I mean, as a police chief, you would have to answer the same question, right?
Right.
What do you do? Okay, well, what they've ended up doing is they have taken officers and they've laid them off, or they've reassigned. In other words, you had a homicide division, you have a robbery division. Well,
Right.
now they're going to go on the streets for patrol.
Right.
Okay. Well, we know what happens if you minus the investigative division. Then those crimes are going to go up.
Right.
Because no one's solving them.
Right.
Right. So the same person that committed that robbery is going to do 15 more before you caught them.
Exactly.
Because no one's working the case.
Right, it's a snowball effect.
So we see the effect of what happens when you reduce police, when you reduce their presence and them doing their job.
Right.
So why would we not think that that's exactly what's going to happen in the school district if we reduce their presence?
Right. Our presence is important. I think that, like you said at the beginning, that authority figure goes a long way inside our schools, and with that influence, it deters a lot of crime. It really does, and we need that aspect in our schools today. It's different today. It's a different area and life we live in right now, and it shows as we go through this COVID situation. You know, it's a different time, and we need to be able to conduct and show ourselves professionally wherever we are, not only in the school district.
So how has COVID affected sort of y'all? I mean, obviously, I know there was the first star school, at least here, we had online learning for the kids.
Right.
I think everyone has pretty much agreed that there's a reason for a teacher.
Right,
Right.
right.
And online learning it was the solution.
Right.
I mean, it was definitely the solution. We want them to get an education. We have online learning at the college, this, that, and other.
Right,
But
exactly.
But reality is when you start taking some either extremely basic classes, we're talking
Yeah.
elementary and
Yeah.
stuff to get your foundations.
Right.
Those require a teacher. And when you start getting to some advanced ones, like, I mean, if you start taking calculus and that, you know, having that conversation of, hey, how do I get past this hump with a teacher is just instrumental.
Right.
And we saw the effects of it. We saw grades start dropping. We saw the issues just because of not having that relationship that we talked about before. Now they're back in school, but obviously that came with, okay, it's now going to be a large group, whether the suggestion of wear a mask, wash your hands.
Right.
Let's just face it, okay? Some kids weren't washing their hands before COVID, okay? And, you know, put your mask up, don't put your mask. I mean, they're still kids.
Right. Right.
And
exactly.
getting them to follow some basic things because the logical reason behind it is not always that easy to do.
Exactly.
Right.
Exactly.
So we've seen an increase in COVID cases just by people being around one another. Usually it's some type of contact that one gets it from another. But I will say that the schools, in my opinion, have done very well with, you know, keeping the kids in school as best they can, getting the ones out to get treatment,
Right.
whatever.
Right.
So how's it affected the law enforcement aspect of it?
Well, I'll tell you what, before I came to Montgomery ISD, we had that similar situation at Lone Star, and the way that we did it was to kind of do a pandemic deployment. And so through that pandemic deployment, we had to kind of think outside the box, go around and increase patrols in the schools where we didn't have roving patrols, and then we had less officers on campus. But as I came to Montgomery ISD, I see that all the police officers are there working.
Sure.
There hasn't been, since I've been there, there hasn't been any officer that's tested positive for COVID. They're taking the precautionary measures to make sure to wear the mask and cover themselves up when they're in a group of people. So we've been fortunate enough not to have any of our officers contract COVID.
Well, you know, and at a smaller department, y'all are at, I say, an increased liability because if one goes out,
Yeah,
you know,
it puts a
that's
strain.
It's a huge impact. That's
Right.
just one.
Right.
And normally they've worked together,
Exactly.
right? So
Exactly.
there's those issues. But, you know, to go back to some of the changes that we've experienced just sort of over the years in the education code, and you talked about one. When we were in school, okay, you know, there was corporal punishment. You got sent to the gym teacher who
Right.
had been crafting a paddle for
Right.
many years for aerodynamics and everything else. That was it,
Right.
And whenever you got in trouble at school, you were going to get in trouble even worse at home.
Right. Exactly.
If that happened, right? So I know throughout the years, the education code has changed.
Right.
And one of the biggest changes that I saw along the way, that it fell under the guidance of disruption, right? You know, you had disruption of transportation, disruption of classroom.
Right.
And so it transitioned. I remember we had the paddle, we talked about that, and then you had after-school detention.
Detention. Yeah.
Right? Either way, all that was handled by the school, right? There were no police involved
Right.
at that time. I remember police coming to my school, and it was just to talk about police work,
Yeah,
right?
career
You know,
day.
the
Yeah.
Career day type
Yeah.
of thing, right? But they weren't there for that.
Right.
Again, the gym teachers and those people handled any discipline stuff. Then it sort of switched, and we saw police coming into school.
Right.
And that turned, and I think, I don't want to say there was confusion. I think that that role had never been there. So they're trying to define that role. And part of that role became in police issuing citations.
Right.
Okay. And, well, the problem that obviously came out of that is, for one, there's discrepancy. A certain family can pay $500 for a ticket.
Yeah.
Another family cannot pay $500
Right.
for a ticket.
Right.
And more importantly, we know the kid is not paying the $500
Exactly.
no matter who the ticket's
Exactly.
getting written to, right?
Exactly.
So we're now punishing the parent
Mm-hmm.
for the kid doing something or whatever. So that led to issues,
Right.
right? So then it came to, okay, well, don't write citations.
Mm-hmm.
To the point in the law, it actually says you cannot write a citation, okay?
Right.
But it still had it in there as far as their disruption. And it
Mm-hmm.
wasn't the most recent change that I found on the disruption thing that we put in legislature was in 2013, where they actually removed it from being a student in the school.
Mm-hmm.
So, which sort of makes it strange to me when I'm reading the law, because it basically says you're disrupting the classroom, but you're not a student.
Yeah.
Okay?
Yeah.
Well, at that point, you got a bigger problem because they've gone past the front door, they've
Right,
gone into the
right.
school, they've gone, but in looking at this, I also found some other laws that probably need to be updated or changed. There's still possession of a pager on.
Right. Right. Who
on,
uses pages anymore?
Yeah, if they got a pager, they got some other problems I think going on. But it actually, the way the law is defined for the paging thing, it would fall under every single cell phone we have. So, which obviously we're not enforcing. Kids are allowed to have
Right.
their cell phone there. Everybody has their cell phone. But it nearly seems as though we started with the school handling things, switching it over to police,
Right.
taking it away from police, and now it's nearly in limbo because we've also seen where, kids are fighting
Right.
and teachers are scared
Right.
to grab that kid like they used to.
intervene,
If
yeah.
we were in school,
Yeah.
teacher grab you, throw you one way, another teacher grab you, throw you
Right.
another way, and now teachers are concerned about something happening to them, right? Losing their job, losing their certification, losing all that. So, I mean, as this has changed, where do you sort of see the discipline, the future of policing education in the school as such?
Well, I think that through those changes, we have learned to do more training on the aspect of how we communicate to kids. Now, as it relates to how teachers or administrators think, I don't think I can speak on that. But as far as the law enforcement is concerned, we may not be happy about not being able to write citations to kids who get into a fight or kids that might steal something that's less than the minimum of a Class B. But we have to follow the law.
Sure. Right.
And so that's where I think that our counseling skills come into point. And just talking with these kids and getting on a level that they understand us and why we are there. We're there to assist them in any way that we can. I think that we are kind of placed in between sometimes what we can and what we can't do as far as the law is concerned. But we need to be able to come to a job, prepared to do a job, and do it. Sometimes we can assist administration better if we know about all the situations. And sometimes we do, and administration is good on keeping us informed on some of the things that are happening in the school. But we can be an asset as far as information. If it's a law that needs to be addressed, or if it's just a school discipline issue. I think that's where that collaboration comes better into view with us working together for the common goal.
Well, in talking about that, the hierarchy is much different for a school district police department than it is a typical police department.
Right.
When we talk about a police budget or a police department, you have the chief or elected official or whoever that may be.
Right.
And they are taking care of a police department. That's all they're taking care of.
Right.
That is their priority,
Right.
is a security.
Right.
In your role, the people that are making decisions for budget, where they have other priorities, and understandably,
Right. Right.
one of those is security, but the other is teachers,
Right.
education,
Exactly.
where we're going with this. So, where a top priority in other areas is personnel that we would address, I won't say you fall to a lower rung. I'm saying you're in a basket, right?
Right,
You're
right.
in the same basket as trying to take care of the other departments of the education system,
Right.
which is another challenge that y'all face in doing that.
Right.
Because for you to justify a position, a car, or whatever, well, that may mean that they can't add that other teacher
Yeah,
to
yeah.
cut down on classroom size
Right.
and to do those things. So different challenges
Right,
that
right.
you certainly face being in that particular role.
Right.
So the other thing in the education code, it sort of defines out, and I won't say it really mixes things, but basically says that the board sort of defines y'all's role on what you do now. But then it goes on to say that they cannot make you do administrative and counseling type things,
Right.
and that you will enforce the law. So where's the middle? What is it that I guess they ask you to do that would be specific for a school district officer that's sort of in that realm, right?
Well, the law changed also where the police chief reports directly to the superintendent.
Correct, I did see that.
So coming back to the ISD level and having to kind of revisit all those laws and understand them a little bit better, I have had the experience of communicating very well with our superintendent. He has a great outlook on the district and what he wants for the district. And what he has told me is to think about and focus on safety
Right.
for our district. And he has given me the latitude to do the things that I need to do as far as the police department is concerned. So I think that having a person like that in control that knows, he's been a superintendent at other districts, so he's worked with police chiefs, so he knows the ins and outs of working with a police chief. So I think that's important, number one, to have someone that knows what you do on a day-to-day basis and allow you the latitude to do your job.
So now, do y'all do your own investigations if there is if there's a child that, let's say that you have a claim of a sexual assault, is that something that y'all do? Is that something that y'all don't have the capacity to do right now and turned over to investigators? How does that work currently?
Well, what we would do is do the initial investigation, and so we don't have the expertise to do the full investigation. So we would lean more on the sheriff department, the constable's office, or the city to assist us in that effort.
Okay, so as far as investigation, I guess what I was getting at, so we have school notifications, okay, and whenever, so I get a kid, I arrest him for assault, okay, but
Right.
I'm up in the Woodlands,
Right.
okay, but he goes to Montgomery ISD, and by law I have to notify
Right.
Montgomery ISD within 24 hours, and then send you a follow-up
Right.
that this person got. So it wasn't on school campus, but you get notified. So what happens to this notification? What's the problem? I know I send it. So what happens when it's received?
Well, that notification goes to the school. There's nothing that the police department does with that notification other than know that it's there, know that this kid committed a crime and he was arrested or cited for whatever issue that he violated. And so it's up. It goes to the school, and the principals are made available of that information, and it kind of just stays there. It's nothing. I don't think that there's any disciplinary issue that they're going to go through, but I'm not sure.
Follow up with that. It's basically just a notice. They know
it's a notification. Yeah.
That
yeah.
this person may not be in
Right.
school Monday.
Right.
So,
Right.
but-
Exactly.
Now, you talked about dealing with the county attorney because a majority of the people you deal with are juvenile.
Right.
and that is your direct connection as far as the juvenile thing. And I know that a lot of the focus on changing the disciplinary process seems to be on keeping the kids in school, right? I mean, because before, as we go back, we went, you getting expelled was nothing. You getting 3 or 4 days out of school, not coming back with nothing. But obviously, research has shown the detriment of a kid not completing school, and not being in school and having that structure, and as much as some people may not be aware, I mean, we have children that the only time they eat is when they go to school, and they have other issues at home, and that is the strongest structure that they have in their life.
Exactly.
And that was the other concern when COVID came around, and we've seen some increase in family violence. We've seen some increase in child abuse, that type of thing, because that structure is then gone, right? And certainly there's concern of juvenile crime rising because they're not there, right? But I think that, again, goes back to that relationship that you have with them, right? What programs do you have? What programs do you see to be done to, I guess, help those relationships with the kids? What do y'all sort of do right now besides the conversation?
So we are preparing to have monthly themes that are associated with different events. Maybe it'll be Sexual Assault Month, or maybe it will be Campus Safety Month. Those type of themes that we can go in and talk not only to students, but we can talk to teachers, faculty, staff about those type of events. We are teaming up with Montgomery County Sheriff Department to do a walkthrough active shooter incident so that we can kind of gauge what people are doing, if they're doing the correct thing. And so those type of things to educate them, those type of things to bring those things to the forefront that they're not doing is what we want to do on a regular basis, a monthly basis, a weekly basis. We've talked about a leadership academy. This leadership academy is going to be on all 3 levels, elementary, middle school, and probably high school as well. This leadership academy allows the officers to go in on a regular basis, meet with students, and talk to them about issues that they may be having, whether it's law enforcement, whether it's whether they didn't make the football team, you know. So I think that's important for us to do as well. So we are trying to build our relationships with everyone in that community, and to give us a better professional and good look for the whole community, not only the school district, but the whole community.
Sure, and I think that it's a big part of the community. I mean, it's not just the schools. Like I said, when y'all have that football game, the community turns out, right?
They're there.
And you're there protecting them, protecting their property. And again, it's that relationship with the kids. And, you brought up as far as not making the team. And one of the biggest things that research seems to be showing right now with the youth of today is coping skills.
Right, exactly, exactly.
Understanding that, it's okay to fail.
Right.
That's just a challenge that you get over in life, right?
Exactly.
But it's, not to get too far off into that topic of everybody getting a
trophy,
right? But that's the consequence of what we're dealing with.
Exactly.
Is that sometimes, no, you don't make the team.
You lose.
And sometimes you fail.
Yeah.
And these are just challenges that you have to have the ability to work through, to get through, even in your own situation of you talking about trying for chief at a couple places, that, as you said, it was just a way to push you to where you needed to be.
Exactly.
But it's an education that our kids are learning now, and certainly y'all being there to help them with that. And I think that role model staying in the school is huge.
It is.
I know that I've heard many officers from schools talk about times in which they've seen a child, and I think that's one thing, even just in police work in general, but certainly in the schools, how many times you've run into somebody later in life that you had no idea that you had any impact on anything they were doing, a conversation you had that was maybe 30 seconds long that you
Right.
went on with your day and couldn't remember an hour later,
Right.
that they're coming up and talking to you 10 years later, 15 years later,
Right.
of the impact you made, that something
Right.
happened that day, changed their course or whatever.
And that's the best feeling you can have, and I've had those experiences time and time again. And sometimes I don't remember their name, but they remember you.
Right.
And they remember the things that you did for them. And it's fulfilling to know that you had something to do with somebody's life and to change that. It was very fulfilling.
Well, I think you certainly have covered that. I think that you're a great role model, have some great visions for where you want your department to go, and just in general, we all, it seems common sense
Yes.
of what y'all are doing and what
Right.
we're doing. But as we know from being in police work a long time, that common sense is not always common.
Right.
And so I know that we will do very well with you out there and taking care of the kids and everything. And I thank you for taking on that responsibility of all those kids.
Yes, sir.
There are many people in law enforcement that tell you they don't want your
Right.
job. They don't want any of your officers' jobs. That's a lot of work that y'all do on a regular basis. But I thank you for coming on today. I thank you for sharing your experience and your history, and I wish you so much luck with what you do out there. And thank y'all for listening to the show. If you want to sponsor the show, if you would like to be on the show, if there's a topic that you'd like covered on the show, you can always reach me, Dan@crimescenetoday.com. Next week, we're going to try to have another true crime coming on, where we talk about a crime that we've worked here in Montgomery County, and give you sort of the background and detail from the detectives or the crime scene investigators that worked it. And then we're probably going to be taking a nice break for Christmas, and we'll be enjoying our families and hoping that you enjoy yours. So we'll see you next time, and thanks for listening.